All right, everybody, get ready. We are going deep today. Deep into the Crown Act.
Yeah, it's everywhere, right? All over the U.S.
It really is gaining traction. And we've got a ton of sources to dig into. Wikipedia's here.
Of course, gotta have Wikipedia.
We've got GovDocs,
Oh, nice.
the American Bar Association.
They always have some interesting takes.
We've even got stuff from the New York State Education Department.
Wow, that's interesting.
Plus, some really impactful stories from the Associated Press. So, by the end of this deep dive, you'll know exactly what the Crown Act is.
And why it matters. So much more than just hair.
And where things stand right now with it. Okay, so, first things first.
Lay it on me.
What exactly is the Crown Act? I mean, I know it stands for Create a Respectful and Open Workplace for Natural Hair Act.
Right.
But what's that actually mean, like, practically?
Well, in a nutshell, it's about stopping discrimination, specifically based on hair texture and protective hairstyle.
Protective hairstyles.
Yeah, you know, the kinds of styles that are so often associated with race.
Got it. Okay, so when we say protective hairstyles, what are we actually talking about?
Think braids, locks,
Line.
twists,
Okay.
bantu knots,
Got it.
afros. These are styles that, not only look amazing, but they really protect natural hair.
They do.
But for some reason, these styles,
Yeah.
they get targeted. People think they're not professional.
Which is just crazy to me. It's hair. How can hair be unprofessional? It's wild.
It is wild.
But it's not just like a personal thing.
Right.
Like, this has real consequences.
Big time.
One of our sources, a study from Delaware, found that Black women are 80% more likely to change their natural hair just to fit in at work.
Wow, 80%.
It's staggering, really.
That is a huge number.
It tells you something.
And it tells you something, right?
But it does.
It tells you how deep these biases go. I mean, we're talking about people feeling like they have to conform
Yeah.
to Eurocentric beauty standards.
Yeah.
Standards that have historically, excluded and marginalized people of color.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just in their heads. This pressure,
Yeah.
It leads to actual discrimination. The 2019 Dove Crown research study, they found that Black women are 1.5 times more likely to be sent home from work because of their hair.
Sent home from work. Seriously,
Yeah.
that is so unfair. And it makes you wonder, how many opportunities people have been denied just because of how they wear their hair.
Right.
So where does the Crown Act come into this whole thing? Was there like a specific moment, a turning point that kind of sparked this whole movement?
Yeah, for sure. California, they were the trailblazers. They passed the first Crown Act back in 2019.
2019.
Yeah. And it was huge. Like, it really set the stage for this nationwide movement.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is how they did it in California. They didn't create a whole new law.
No.
No. They took existing laws, like the Fair Employment and Housing Act,
Okay.
FEHA,
Uh-huh.
and the Education Code,
Mm-hmm.
and they updated them
Oh.
to specifically include hair texture and protective styles as protected characteristics.
Smart. So they were basically like, hey, discrimination based on hair is still discrimination.
Yes.
And we're not having it. I'm looking at this interactive map from GovDocs right now, and it's pretty amazing to see how many other states have followed California's lead.
It is pretty amazing.
As of September 2024, 27 states and Washington, D.C. have Crown laws.
Yeah. The momentum is definitely building.
It really is. It seems like every few months there's another state jumping on board. Just recently we had Vermont,
Oh, yeah.
Texas,
Big one.
Michigan. They all joined the list.
Awesome.
So clearly things are moving.
Definitely. And it's not just at the state level either. There's been a huge push for a federal Crown Act, too.
Oh, that's right. I remember reading about that in an Associated Press article.
Yeah.
The U.S. House of Representatives actually passed a version of the Crown Act back in 2022. And it wasn't just like a super partisan thing either.
Yeah, it was pretty remarkable.
It had bipartisan support, which is, pretty rare these days.
It really is.
It felt like a real turning point, but
But
there's always a but, isn't there?
unfortunately, yeah, it's stalled in the Senate.
Really?
Couldn't get past a filibuster. So it never even made it to a vote.
Oh, so frustrating. I mean, it felt like there was real hope for a nationwide standard, something to protect everybody.
It did feel that way.
But I guess it's not completely over yet, right?
No, not at all.
Didn't I see somewhere that they might try again in 2024?
You did. One of the Wikipedia articles mentioned that Congressman Troy Carter, he's hopeful about reintroducing it next year.
Oh, wow.
So yeah,
Yeah.
the fight at the federal level, it's definitely not over.
Fingers crossed. As we're talking about all of this, something's really hit me. The Crown Act's impact. It goes way beyond the workplace.
It really does.
This tackles discrimination in housing and public spaces, even in schools. It's like It's saying, hey, your hair should never be a barrier, no matter where you are.
It's about basic respect.
It is. And equal opportunity. And then when you hear those personal stories, like the ones in the Associated Press article, it really hits home.
Oh, absolutely.
The story about the Cook twins in Massachusetts.
Oh, those poor girls.
They were punished for wearing braids in school. I mean, can you imagine
Awful.
being told your hair is wrong when you're just a kid?
Just trying to learn.
It's heartbreaking. And then there's that wrestler in New Jersey. He was forced to cut his dreadlocks before a match.
I remember that one. Awful.
These aren't just abstract legal things.
Yeah.
These are real lives, real people impacted by this. It feels like such an attack on someone's identity
It is.
and their cultural expression.
Absolutely. So how does the Crown Act address that specifically? Discrimination in schools. Is there anything in our sources that talks about that?
Oh, yeah, for sure. We've got this really insightful document from the New York State Education Department, and they get it. They really get it.
They do.
Oh, yeah. They talk about how the Crown Act promotes school belonging.
To belong. Yeah. And engagement for all students.
I love that phrase, school belonging.
Right.
It's about creating an environment where everyone feels seen, respected, accepted for who they are.
Exactly. It's powerful. And it makes me think about those statistics we were talking about earlier, about Black women feeling pressure to conform at work.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder where these biases come from in the first place.
It does. Why is there this stigma around certain hairstyles?
Right. It's a big question. And to really answer it, we got to go way back, centuries, to a history of colonialism and these Eurocentric beauty standards.
Oh, I see.
For centuries, European features were the ideal.
Yeah. Straight hair, light skin, that sort of thing.
Exactly. And anything that was different from that was seen as less than, uncivilized.
So this isn't just about hair then, is it? It's about power.
It's about power.
Yeah.
And control.
Dominant groups using beauty standards as a way to control and marginalize anyone who doesn't fit the mold.
Exactly. And those biases,
They're still here.
they're still impacting people of color today.
They are. The American Bar Association article we have, it gets into some of the legal stuff around this.
Oh, interesting.
It actually asks the question, is hair discrimination race discrimination?
Good question.
And they unpack that question really well. They point out that a lot of times, appearance policies, they're written to seem neutral.
On the surface.
But in reality, they often end up having a much bigger impact on people of color.
Systemic racism. It can be so subtle, so insidious.
It's like classic systemic racism, isn't it?
It is. You've got these rules that seem fair when you read them, but when you look at who they actually affect, it's clear that they're just keeping those inequalities in place.
The article also mentioned how several states, California, New York, New Jersey, they've actually explicitly recognized that hair discrimination is a form of race discrimination.
That's huge.
And there's this growing movement to make those protections nationwide.
It makes sense, though, doesn't it?
It does.
Race isn't just about skin color. It's about so much more. It's about culture. It's about physical characteristics.
Like hair texture, protective styles.
Exactly.
It's like the Crown Act is saying, hey, all of this is part of someone's racial identity and it deserves to be protected.
It does.
It's like a legal acknowledgement of something that so many people have known and experienced for a long time.
It is. And that's powerful.
It is powerful. As we're talking about this, it's making me think about the Crown Act in the context of other civil rights movements. It feels like it's part of a much bigger conversation about equity, about inclusion.
Oh, it absolutely is. It's about recognizing that discrimination, it can look so many different ways. Sometimes it's really subtle. And it's about dismantling those systems of oppression, bit by bit, to create a more just world for everybody.
And it makes you realize how interconnected all of these issues really are. We're not just talking about hair here. We're talking about tackling deep-seated biases that affect everything.
Everything.
This whole deep dive, it's been a real eye-opener for me.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
It is. I thought I understood this topic, but clearly I had a lot more to learn. It's amazing how one piece of legislation can spark such a huge conversation about identity, about culture, about social justice.
It's the beauty of these deep dives, right?
It is.
Peeling back the layers, looking at things from different angles, challenging our own assumptions. And sometimes what starts as a conversation about hair, it leads to a much deeper understanding of, race, identity, equality. It's all connected.
It is. And I think that's something our listeners can take away from this too. Be curious. keep learning, and use your voice to advocate for change. We can't just sit back and expect things to get better on their own.
We got to be part of it.
We have to be active. We have to participate in creating a more just and equitable world.
Absolutely. And you know what? We haven't even talked about the official Crown Act website yet.
Oh, that's right.
It's incredible. Like, anyone who wants to learn more about the movement, get involved, or even just see if their state has a Crown law, that's the place to go.
I was looking at it earlier. It's amazing how much information they have there.
It really is. They've got personal stories, legal analyses, educational materials, toolkits for advocates. It's a lot.
And they make it so easy to take action. They've got a petition you can sign, information on how to contact your elected officials.
It's really well done.
It's not just a website. It's like a hub for activism and community.
It really is.
It's a movement anyone can be a part of, whether you're educating yourself, talking to friends and family, contacting your representatives.
Every little bit helps.
Every action makes a difference.
It does. And that's what's so inspiring about all of this. It shows that collective action, it works. When people get together and demand change, things happen. Real change. Tangible change.
It's a great reminder that we all have a role to play in creating a more just and equitable world. And sometimes, it starts with something as simple as protecting the right to wear your hair the way you want. It's about respecting everyone's dignity.
Absolutely.
And their right to express themselves.
Beautifully said. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap up part 1 of our deep dive.
It is. But don't go anywhere.
We'll be back in a flash to talk about some key takeaways and some final thoughts on the Crown Act.
That phrase, school belonging, it really stuck with me.
Me too.
It's such a powerful idea. And it gets right to the heart of, what the Crown Act is all about.
Right. Totally. It's acknowledging something really simple, but so profound. Like, a hairstyle can completely change how a kid feels about themselves, how they do in school.
It's true.
You tell a child that their hair is wrong. Or unprofessional. You're telling them that a part of who they are is not okay. And that's a message that sticks with you.
It does. It reminds me of that quote from the New York State Education Department. They said, "The Crown Act helps to promote school belonging and engagement for all students, reduces disparities in school discipline, increases educational engagement and academic success, and protects students regardless of gender or gender identity." It's amazing how much they packed into one sentence.
Right. It's like, it really captures the whole thing. These issues are so intertwined. When everyone in school feels safe, respected, seen for who they are, everyone benefits.
It's true.
Less bullying, more inclusion. Kids can focus on learning, not on whether their hair is going to get them in trouble.
Makes sense. And it makes me think about those statistics we were talking about. Black women feeling pressure to conform at work. It's like this pressure starts so young.
It does.
And it just follows you. But where does it all come from? Why is there this stigma around certain hairstyles?
That's a question that takes us back a long way. Centuries even. We're talking colonialism, the imposition of Eurocentric beauty standards.
I see where you're going with this.
Right? Think about it. For hundreds of years, European features were the ideal.
Straight hair, light skin.
That's it. And if you didn't fit that, you were considered less than. Uncivilized even.
So it's not about hair then? Not really. It's about power, right?
Absolutely. It's about power. It's about dominant groups using beauty standards as a way to control, to marginalize anyone who doesn't fit in that little box they've created.
And those biases, those are still here. They're still affecting people of color today.
Big time. It's crazy how deep it runs.
The American Bar Association article, it actually dives into some of the legal tangles around all of this.
Oh, interesting.
They even ask the question, is hair discrimination race discrimination?
Good question.
It is. And they really unpack it well. They point out how a lot of these appearance policies, on the surface, they seem neutral.
Right. You read them and you think, okay, that seems fair.
But then you look at who they actually end up impacting the most. And it's clear they're perpetuating these existing inequalities.
Classic systemic racism. It's so sneaky sometimes.
It is. The article also mentions how some states like California, New York, New Jersey, they've actually gone ahead and said, yep, hair discrimination, IS race discrimination.
That's a big step.
It is. And there's a growing movement to make that recognition nationwide.
It makes sense though, right?
It does.
Race isn't just about skin color. It's about all of it. Culture, physical characteristics, your whole heritage.
Like hair texture, like those protective styles.
Yeah, exactly. And the Crown Act is saying all of that deserves protection.
It's like finally acknowledging something people have been saying and experiencing for so long.
It is. And putting it into law. And that's powerful.
It is. You know, talking about this, it makes me think about the Crown Act as part of all the other civil rights movements. Like, it's all part of this bigger push for equity, for inclusion.
Oh, it absolutely is.
Yeah.
We have to acknowledge that discrimination comes in so many forms, and we have to dismantle those systems of oppression piece by piece to make a world that's actually fair for everyone.
You're so right. It's not just hair. It's about getting rid of those deep-seated biases that affect everything.
Everything.
This deep dive has honestly been a real eye-opener for me.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
I thought I knew about this, but I had so much to learn. It's amazing how much this one piece of legislation makes you think about. Identity, culture, social justice.
It's why we do these deep dives, right?
It is.
Peeling back those layers, looking at things from all sides, challenging our own ideas about things. Sometimes you start talking about hair, and you end up learning about so much more. Race, identity, equality, it's all connected.
It is, and I think that's what our listeners can take from this. Stay curious, never stop learning, and use your voice, you know, to speak up, to advocate for change. We can't just sit back and hope things get better.
We got to be part of the change.
We have to be active. We have to be part of creating a more just and equitable world.
Absolutely. And you know what? We haven't even talked about the official Crown Act website.
We haven't.
It's an amazing resource. For anyone who wants to learn more about the movement, get involved, even just check if their state has a Crown law. That's the place to go.
I was checking it out earlier. It's amazing how much info they have there.
It's really impressive. They've got personal stories, legal analyses, resources for educators, toolkits for activists, you name it.
And they make it so easy to take action. You can sign a petition. They have info on how to contact your elected officials.
It's so well put together.
It's not just a website. It's like a hub for activism, for community.
It really is.
It's a movement anyone can be part of. Educate yourself. Talk to friends and family. Contact your representatives.
Every little bit counts.
Every action really does make a difference.
It does. And that's what I love about this whole conversation. It shows that collective action, it works. When people get together and demand change, things happen. Real, tangible change.
It's a good reminder that we all have a part to play in building a more just world. And sometimes, you know, it starts with something as simple as protecting people's right to wear their hair how they want. It's about everyone's dignity and their right to express themselves.
Perfectly said. Well, I think that's a good place to pause for now.
It is. But don't go anywhere, listeners.
We'll be back in a snack to talk about key takeaways and our final thoughts on the Crown Act.
Back again. Final part of our deep dive into the Crown Act. What a journey this has been.
It has. I mean, who knew hair could be this interesting?
Right. I mean, we've gone from history to legal battles to personal stories. It's a whole movement.
It really is. And I feel like we've just, scratched the surface. There's so much more to this.
There is. It's like you can't talk about hair discrimination without talking about all of it. Race, power, the impact of colonialism, it's all connected.
So true. And as we wrap this up, I think it's important to, zoom out a little.
Yeah.
Think about the bigger picture. The Crown Act is amazing, don't get me wrong. It's a huge step towards a fairer world.
Right. It's progress.
But it's not the only answer.
Yeah.
So as we kind of, think about everything we've talked about, what are those key takeaways? What should our listeners remember? What do you hope they walk away with?
I think the biggest one is that the Crown Act, it's not just about hair. It's about, dignity, respect, making sure everyone has the same chances, no matter their race or their hairstyle.
Yes. It's recognizing that everyone deserves to be treated fairly, with respect. And that includes respecting their culture, their identity, how they choose to express themselves.
It's about fighting those deep biases that have been around for way too long. The ones that tell us certain hairstyles are unprofessional or messy or even scary.
Exactly. And it's about all of us. We have a responsibility to, call out discrimination when we see it, even when it's like sneaky, even when it seems small. Those little biases add up. They create this culture where people feel like they have to fit in a certain mold or face the consequences.
That phrase, subtle discrimination, it's really powerful, isn't it?
It is.
It's so easy to miss those little things that can have a huge impact on people. A comment about someone's hair, an unspoken expectation to look a certain way.
And that's why we got to stay informed. Listen to other people's experiences and challenge our own assumptions. We might not even realize the ways we're contributing to harmful stereotypes or to a culture that, doesn't value everyone equally.
Something from the ABA article really stuck with me. They said, implementation and enforcement of the Crown Act will force employers and schools across the United States to take a closer look at their facially neutral grooming and appearance policies and their disparate impact on African Americans and other minorities. It really makes you think about those policies that, even if they don't mean to be discriminatory, they end up having that effect.
For sure. And that's why we need laws like the Crown Act. They bring those issues to light and they give us a way to challenge those practices. It's about holding institutions accountable and making sure everyone has a fair shot.
It shows the power of collective action, too. The Crown Act wouldn't be here without all those people fighting for it. The advocates, the lawmakers, everyday folks speaking up.
It's so inspiring. A movement that started with just a few people, and now it's nationwide. It shows that when we get together and fight for what we believe in, things can really change. Big time.
And that's something I hope our listeners take away from this. Change is possible, but we have to be part of it. Be informed, get involved, speak up for what you believe in, whether that's supporting laws like the Crown Act or just calling out those little biases we see in our everyday lives.
If you're feeling inspired, go check out the official Crown Act website. They have so much information there about how to get involved, how to support the movement. There's a link in our show notes.
It has been amazing exploring this topic with you. I hope our listeners learned as much as I did.
Me too. As we wrap things up, I want to leave you with one last thought. If hair discrimination seems like something new, it just shows how much those little biases can affect people.
Right.
It makes you think, what other kinds of discrimination are we missing? What biases are we holding on to without even realizing it?
Such a good question, and hopefully one of our listeners keep thinking about even after the episode is over. It's a reminder to keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep challenging the way things are.
Because in the end, it's about recognizing that everyone is valuable. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity, no matter their race, their gender, their religion, their sexuality, or yes, even their hairstyle.
Well said. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the Crown Act. We hope you learned something new.
Keep learning, keep questioning, keep pushing for a better world. Until next time.